Mario?
So about 2 or so weeks ago, I released this, a video documenting the mystery behind Mario being a playable character in Luigi's Mansion. And during this video, I highlighted a really neat discovery showing that Luigi's Mansion still has a multiplayer mode within its code. This code clones Luigi, and with some supporting codes, is capable of having him controlled by a second controller. All of this was discovered by a user named KIRBYMIMI. Now, trying to play this multiplayer mode causes a ton of issues. So that's what brings us to where we are today. Is it possible to beat the original Luigi's Mansion if you clone Luigi and have him join you in your quest? It may sound like that is a simple answer because you have double the firepower, but I assure you, it's not so straightforward. There's a ton of weird things that happen due to the mode being unfinished, so we have quite a lot to talk about. So sit back, relax, and let me take you on another journey through these haunted halls. Now, before beginning any kind of journey with your equally handsome clone of yourself, it's important to look your best, and nothing less. That's why today I partnered with the shaving gods themselves, Dollar Shave Club. So a huge thanks to them for sponsoring the video. Dollar Shave Club has you covered for all your grooming needs, from showering, oral care, deodorants, and most importantly, shaving. I made the switch to Dollar Shave Club 2 or 3 years ago, and I've never gone back. It's simple, easy, and effective, just like a vacuum cleaner for spirits. I highly recommend giving their star set a whirl if you haven't felt the magic of Dollar Shave Club yet. It comes with a nice executive handle and 6 high-quality blades. On top of that, you get a 3-ounce tube of Dr. Carver's shave butter. Appropriately named, mind you, to ensure you're getting the slickest shave possible. For a limited time, new members get their first month with a starter set for only $5. So go to dollarshaveclub.com/SwankyBox to get your first starter set for just $5. And once again, a huge thanks to Dollar Shave Club for sponsoring this spooky video and for supporting me as a creator. It's greatly appreciated. So first, we have to explain the setup for this challenge because there had to be some additions to make this even possible in the first place. First and foremost, the second Luigi who we spawn actually spawns without equipment. So in order to make this run possible, we had to modify his equipment and give him a poltergust. If we don't, this turns into a Luigi wins by doing absolutely nothing challenge, which isn't possible. Both Luigis need a poltergust because in this multiplayer mode, certain functions must be activated by 2 vacuum cleaners. For example, in order to capture Lydia, Luigi must vacuum the curtain and pull it over, but this no longer works with just one Luigi. Both Luigis have to vacuum simultaneously in order for this to work. So we can't just leave our second Luigi chilling by the front door while we clear the whole game with the other Luigi, because even if this dual vacuum functionality wasn't a thing, there's still certain situations in which both Luigis need to be active. Now let's talk about the hiccups with our second Luigi, who is pretty much cursed. This pre-Gooigi entity, our second Luigi, has some pretty bad luck. First and foremost, he can't pick up any items at all, so any goodies you come across in your quests can only be picked up by player 1. Our second Luigi can still fight ghosts and do other things, but he can't actually obtain anything. This becomes extremely problematic later on, but I'll cover that when we come to it. Our second Luigi can move independently of our first Luigi and go anywhere they want in the mansion. The game will auto-generate a split-screen camera when doing so, which is pretty nifty. However, while you're free to explore to your heart's content, or at least the areas you have unlocked, the objects in the mansion will unload without the grace of player 1 nearby. One thing to note is it also takes our second Luigi a super long time to open doors, so we'll be waiting a while. The Game Boy Horror is also completely broken, since it no longer has a first-person view. Our HUD is completely gone as well, so we won't know how much health we have or what we've collected. However, the most important thing of all is that we can still call for Mario. Luckily, that was preserved, so we can yell for Mario twice as often. So satisfying.
Mario?
Alright, it's now time to start. Upon booting up the game, the first cutscene takes place as Luigi opens the mansion. Once this exterior cutscene is over, both Luigis spawn by the door during the intro cutscene. The neat thing about the second player is that they can actually move during cutscenes. It's pretty cool, but also disorienting because your controller analog inputs are aligned to where the camera is facing. So when the camera changes angles, you pushing up on your analog stick now takes you in a different direction. Just thought I'd throw that out there. We need to spawn the key to the first room and have the player 1 Luigi grab it. Since the first player can only pick up items, they are the ones that need to unlock all the doors. Even with the key picked up by player 1, player 2 still will get the locked door animation when they try to open a door. This never changes, unfortunately. With player 1 now entering the first room, we find ourselves in a neat situation. Player 1's screen starts playing the cutscene for the event where we first meet Gadd, but player 2 can still move around. If player 2 opens the door during the cutscene, this causes the cutscene models to freeze in place. This is because everything freezes in the game when a door animation is happening. But because our second player takes a super long time to open doors, time freezes for the cutscene, but the sound effects and camera motions still take place. Certain animations do as well that aren't designed to stop when a door is being opened. The results are really funny, and once inside, player 2 is free to explore the room while the cutscene takes place. After this, we are whisked away to Gadd's lab to receive a poltergust, despite already having it because we need to make the game force load the equipment on us. If we didn't, player 1 would get a poltergust here and player 2 wouldn't. The second Luigi is free to explore Gadd's lab while we talk to him though, and they can climb the ladder in the back of the room, which pretty much takes him nowhere. After this training starts, we learn something pretty important about a run. Something we should probably take note of. In the training room, Gadd keeps track of all the ghosts that you capture. But this is when we notice that anything captured by player 2 doesn't really count for anything. Although we captured the majority of the ghosts, Gadd didn't acknowledge anything caught by our Gooigi shoo-in. This is important because that means anything caught by player 2 more than likely won't count at all. It'll just be lost and never documented. So portrait ghosts, boos, and bosses should be caught by player 1 always. Thankfully, both Luigis can attack the same target simultaneously, and doing so makes the ghost go into player 1 by default. Or so it seems, that is. Back in the mansion, we can clear out the first couple rooms pretty easily. They behave just like normal except you have twice the firepower. Something that is really interesting is that player 2 can actually vacuum ghosts through the walls if they want to. They can be in a nearby room, and if player 1 stuns a ghost for them, they are free to vacuum the ghost through the wall, which looks pretty funny. After this, we proceed onwards to our first portrait ghost. Neville is pretty much the same, as is Lydia. Lydia is where we figured out that certain actions in the mansion were going to require the use of both poltergeists, as the curtains didn't open when either of us tried doing it solo. But after Lydia, things got weird. This is when we moved on to Chauncey, and entering that room was a mistake. So normally Chauncey is supposed to be sleeping in bed, and when you suck his rocking horse, he awakens and begins his attack. At this point, the door locks too, and you have to hit him with a ball in order to begin the boss battle. But this time, things were different. Immediately upon entering the room as player 1, Chauncey was already out of his crib. He instantly punched Luigi in the back of the head because Chauncey was waiting by the door when I walked through him. Player 2 then entered the room, freezing the movement for a bit while he did so, but Chauncey was actually sleepwalking around the room. Or sleep flying? He was following his attack movement patterns, but he was still in a sleeping state. From this point forward, he didn't punch me anymore, but touching him caused us to be bumped backwards. So we did the next logical thing. We vacuumed the rocking horse, which was a mistake. This caused the doors to lock like usual, but when we went to grab the ball, we realized that Chauncey couldn't be hurt by it. Because he was still in his sleeping animation, he was immune to the damage it caused. With no way to progress, we were essentially stuck here and couldn't leave. Upon reloading the game, we took a slightly different approach. I entered the room, dodged the punch, and then tried hitting him with a ball. It didn't work, and neither did vacuuming the rocking horse because player 2 needed to help me move it. So I ended up leaving the room, and my friend entered the room as player 2. The room's objects were largely unloaded except for a few, but Chauncey wasn't there. However, when I entered the room, it returned to normal, making it so we could finally strike Chauncey with the ball and move on to the actual boss fight. We basically ripped the baby in half after we crossed the streams, and Area 1 came to a close. But Area 2 brought about its own set of unique challenges. So Area 2 is generally one of my favorite areas in the game, primarily because we get to head outside the mansion for the first time. There's something neat about the layout of this first floor in the mansion. We immediately snag the key from the bathroom and head on over to face the floating world Lindas. After their untimely demise at the hands of 2 skilled plumbers, we move on to releasing the boos. The next couple events play out as normal. Catch some boos, meet Toad in the bathroom awkwardly with her green twin, talk to the fortune teller, harness the power of fire, and so on. When attempting to capture Shivers the butler, we know something a bit annoying that can happen in the mansion though. Although both Luigis have the ability to traverse different rooms and be at 2 different places at once, if they are far away from each other and in different loading zones, you may find yourself entering a room and not being able to exit it. This is because when you go through a door, the door actually unloads before it finishes its animation. What you're left with is player 1 or player 2 inside of a room that they can't leave. The door is there, but it's being treated as a wall. This doesn't remedy itself until the other player comes in the previous room. And upon entering, you'll see that the door is actually open despite being gone. It will load when the room loads and then shut by itself. Once this occurs, you can then leave the room. After burning down the house and capturing Shivers, we come across another interesting problem though. Because the camera is oriented in a way that doesn't allow you to use the first-person view, that means we can't aim our Game Boy Horror to scan objects. Regardless of what direction we face, it always targets the same area. I was worried about this when we got into the kitchen area because I knew the doghouse required a scan in order to warp us to the graveyard. Luckily though, we can position Luigi correctly so we can activate the doghouse. This takes us on a one-way ticket to the graveyard since we can't scan the tree stump to go back. Player 2 cannot go through the warp either. This puts us in a pinch because I didn't have a lot of health before entering the graveyard, and I was essentially stuck there. We then begin our fight with Bogmire, whose difficulty is about the same as before. The ghosts only go after the main Luigi, which is nice, but not nice because I was at low health. With our teamwork, we slay the Keeper of the Graveyard and move on to Act 3. Or we would have, but we messed up. So remember when I said that Player 2 shouldn't capture any important ghosts? Well, that was sort of a hunch based off of Gadd's lab and not something we actually knew for certain. Until we beat Bogmire. After we cleared the boss, we turned the spirits into portraits and we realized his was missing. We didn't really think much of it because we got the key to the next area, so it shouldn't have mattered, but it actually did. Because even though you have the key, there's still a scene that still needs to take place that unloads the barbed wire from the door to go outside. That trigger only happens if the game knows Bogmire has been captured. If he hasn't, the game doesn't turn off the spikes on the door. So we had the key to the door, but since Player 2 is a black hole, Bogmire's defeat was never recorded. So we were stuck here. So turning back the clock, when we got back to Bogmire again, we made absolutely sure that Player 1 got the kill. This solved the issue, but then presented us with another one. Player 2's Luigi was really low on health, and there's no way to restore his health at all. Even if you quit the game to the main menu and reload your save, he will still have his low HP. And if Player 2 dies, he just becomes a corpse in the hallway. He'll just sit there until the end of time no matter where you go in the mansion. But because you need a second player to activate certain objects, you'd be screwed if he died. You'd also get locked in certain rooms too because the door glitch will happen. Reloading a save restores Player 2 to 1 HP though, but it's still a brutal journey if he gets down that low. We had to proceed onwards carefully because we knew he was below 30 HP. Area 3 wasn't as bad as the previous areas in terms of surprises, mainly because we had started to get a hang of all the mechanics and exploits at this point, so we didn't screw ourselves over. We head back to the courtyard to find Mario, and then head to the gym. Hitting the punching bags in the gym with Player 1 is really screwed up though, because for some reason they have insane momentum when they are struck, often going in complete circles and clipping through the ceiling. It's completely absurd to watch. Also, if Player 2 takes damage, it's Player 1 that gets hurt and goes flying instead. It can get a bit disorienting. In order to get the key from the treadmill, both Luigis also need to be running on it, which is a bit of a pain to line up because it keeps sliding off. Once we start heading upstairs and begin hunting for the remainder of Mario's items, we do have to be careful with the upstairs hallway since it is loaded with all sorts of enemies. If you split up at all during your adventure and Player 1 gets stuck behind a door, Player 2 will have a hard time making it through the area without taking damage if the enemies aren't unloaded due to distance. They aren't capable of defeating the mice or other foes for some reason, so it's like walking through a minefield since our second Luigi can't heal. Once things got pretty dire in terms of Player 2's health, we started to take preemptive measures to have Player 2 outside of areas that had high damage causing rooms. For example, although the Safari room doesn't have a whole lot of enemies, the smash attack of the ghosts within causes a circular wave of damage to the area. Technically, it could even strike Player 2 through a wall if they're on the other side and not careful. Luckily, we got past this and moved on to Boolasis, which is a boss fight I absolutely hate. Player 2 is free to walk around during the cutscenes leading up to the boss fight, which was pretty funny, but the boss fight itself is pretty much a Player 1 ordeal. Player 2 can't affect the ghosts or use power-ups, so they are useless. They have to stay decently far away to avoid damage as Player 1 defeats the boss. This actually took me a few tries because the camera constantly switching modes made me get stuck often by the booze, as the quick change would disrupt my movement. With the boss's defeat, we clear Area 3 and are able to move on to the final area of the game. Area 4. Now, at this point in our playthrough, I was feeling pretty confident that we wouldn't really run into any major roadblocks. I felt we were on the home stretch given how we overcame the obstacles in the past. Triggering the blackout and how it plays out is pretty much the same, except you definitely want to have Player 2 in a safe location to avoid damage from the surplus of ghosts. Restoring the power plays out exactly the same way, as does a lot of other rooms that follow it. When it comes to accessing the roof, Player 1 will have to do it solo because the lift doesn't respond to Player 2 at all. Even if it did, only one player can be on the roof since the elevator doesn't reset until that player leaves the roof. After clearing a few rooms, we encounter Jarvis, but I want to point out that something really strange happened with him. So when playing the jar game with him, we kept player 2 nearby. There is a certain glitch that can happen to player 2 when attempting to capture portrait ghosts that actually makes his flashlight spark like crazy. It happened earlier in the game too, but it's always absurd to see. It's like the poltergeist glitches out, and the vacuuming stream stays put until player 1 stops vacuuming. Even though this happened, we made sure that Jarvis was defeated only by player 1. But when we started fighting the Boo, upon leaving the room to follow it, Jarvis actually respawned in his pot. This happened during the door transition from the pot room to the armory, but upon going back in, Jarvis was nowhere to be found. I'm not sure what caused Jarvis to still be alive, but it only occurred this one time and it was really strange. Fast forward a few rooms and boos later, and we find ourselves at the final 2 rooms of the mansion. Except for some reason, the ice room seemed to be already active before we entered it. You could hear the icicles falling inside in the hallway before walking in the room. Upon entering the room with both Luigis, the game crashed, which was super concerning. We aren't sure why, but for some reason player 2 wasn't allowed in this room for us. So I proceeded with only player 1 and cleared the room. Since player 2 was still low on health, we kept them outside the room for Vincent Van Gogh. Honestly, this worked out pretty well because they could provide cover fire essentially through the wall without having to worry about taking damage. After his defeat, we moved on to the final boss of the game. Now what's interesting is that Mario's portrait was completely glitched out in the final cutscene. Earlier in the game it was completely fine, but we were left with a headless Mario that didn't morph into Bowser. It was honestly kind of creepy, but a good warning as to what was about to come, because generally I thought Bowser was going to be a really easy fight. But no, not at all, because for some reason, everything about this fight just feels completely off. I don't really know how to describe it, but it felt like the collision and hitboxes for both Bowser, his attacks, and the spike balls he threw were out of whack. For one, you couldn't vacuum his spike balls up at all until they came to a complete rest. Normally you could suck them up when they were slowing down to a roll, but that didn't work here. For a while, the hitbox seemed to be bigger than the balls themselves. So in order to pick them up, I had to get hit first by them, and then while flashing, grab the ball to use it. I don't know why this was happening, but it made the fight a nightmare. You then had the fact that sometimes the ball would just randomly explode on Bowser or clip through him. Probably the biggest issue of all though was that player 2 couldn't do anything to help. They basically had to keep the split screen camera at bay and dodge attacks, because although they could take damage, any damage they took actually applied to me. So if they were hit by fire and I was inside of the fire, I got burned. There were times I got triple comboed, which was pretty brutal. Chewed, spit onto explosive spiked balls, and then burned before I could get up. Normally Bowser can 2-hit combo you with his inhale and fire, but there was just something off about this whole fight. It was extremely frustrating to complete, since we had half the time we normally did to strike him with the spiked balls, but with enough patience, we eventually were able to clear it. And I have to say, it was kind of worth it, because watching the final cutscene play out with 2 Luigis was pretty funny. So with a lot of patience, careful planning, and some clever workarounds, Luigi's Mansion is possible to beat with a scrapped multiplayer and a cloned Luigi. Mind you, this run wouldn't be possible if we didn't give our second Luigi a poltergeist. But it's incredible to think that something like this could have been played from start to finish for quite a while now. It'll definitely go down as one of my most memorable GameCube experiences to this date. And with that, thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers.